Is that still the worst haunted holidays, or is that been published?
The third book, Haunted Holidays, I'm currently shopping it around to mainstream agents, mainstream publishers, and hoping to get a bite in that avenue so I don't have to do so much of the hard work myself. Of course, I'll be handing a lot more of the percentage over to them, but at the same time, it will put me in Kroger and Walmart and Walgreens, where you can go and buy a copy while you're purchasing feminine items.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah, about.
I also mentioned that we had you on our show last time. We had started to talk a little bit about your experience and Point Pleasant and the Mothman prophecies. And I was so intrigued after it. I don't remember how much we got into it in our last show, but that whole discussion, we had so much feedback from our audience wanting more on your experience at Point Pleasant. So if you'd like to talk about that side, that'd be great, or whatever you would feel like sharing.
Oh, sure, I'm happy to. Where did I leave off last time with Point Pleasant?
I remember. You mentioned you had gone to Point Pleasant, and it was kind of odd experience there because you had said that, people say the Men in Black, and people kind of make fun of, like, oh yeah, there's really Men in Black. You actually experienced Men in Black.
They were more like men in khaki jumpsuits, really.
Well, men in khaki jumpsuits.
That might be their new motif.
So, wherever you want to start, but, we had so much feedback for our last show on the Mothman problem and your experience there. If you want to start from the beginning, go ahead, but we'd love to hear about that again.
Oh, absolutely. When I was in Point Pleasant in 2008 with one of my other team members, his name is Brent. I don't know if he's listening tonight or not. He usually gets sick of all of my radio shows and public appearances I make, so he's heard all the stories before. I'll excuse him this once. The issue in Point Pleasant in 2008, when we were there, we talked to several local historians and local enthusiasts, and they all shared pretty much the same stories with us, as far as the description of the Mothman-type creature, the descriptions of the anomalous and or flukish activity, the paranormal and the supernatural. And there's a strong aura of negative energy, which I attribute to the ancients, the desecration of the sacred land that was there before, plus the treaty that was broken by the drips of blood of Chief Cornstalk, where on his dying breath he cursed the entire community of Point Pleasant. And a lot of more superstitious people attribute the happenings that have occurred at Point Pleasant for years to the curse of course to Chief Cornstalk. Several stories that were shared with us by truckers. One, for example, a trucker said he was driving down the main roadway past the TNT depot in the swampland, and he saw a centaur walk across the road from the swamp into the wooded area. A centaur. You're familiar with that mythological creature, right?
Wow.
Yeah, he's also the same trucker who reported seeing this huge triangle-shaped UFO over top of the nuclear fusion plant, which is in Gallipolis, Ohio, and that's over the river across from Point Pleasant. If you pronounce it Gallipolis or Gallipolis, it depends on the colloquialism or your area from where you're located. Back to your original introduction, you said I'm a brilliant mind, right?
I'm sorry, can you say it again, Neal?
To your original introduction of me, when you said I would be on the show tonight, you did state that I was a brilliant mind, correct? Yeah, I wanted to hear that one more time because I'm recording this session right now. I didn't get it the last time.
Neal Park said that brilliant mind.
That's great. Brilliant mind. Now I'm going to have to tighten my hat because my wife hates my ego. But back to Point Pleasant. There were stories from the original, well, not the original mayor. He would be close to 200 years old, but the last mayor of Point Pleasant, before the current one they have, his son approached me. Are you having difficulty hearing me?
Better now. It was cutting out a little bit. That's better.
Okay, sorry. The former mayor of Point Pleasant, his son approached me and told me a story about how he and some friends, at least 10 years ago, walked over the top of the bank near the grassy knoll and approached this hillside where there was this huge fence with foliage and ivy growing over the fence itself. And they pushed back the foliage and the ivy and the brush and saw over this embankment that drops down into a cul-de-sac these hangars. There were at least 3 or 4 hangars that were at the bottom of the valley. And they saw several men dressed in tan jumpsuits walking around, driving forklifts, driving white panel vans without windows, and then a helicopter flies in rather low, a black helicopter, and lands on a helipad that's in the middle of this valley. And they looked onward and they saw a runway that's at least a mile long. And this is in the mountains of West Virginia, you know, where the movie Wrong Turn took place, where everybody died because of the Mongoloids. Well, it's similar to that. Yeah. Am I cutting out again? I'm sorry. Doggone it. Let me take you off speakerphone, because I'm trying to get all of this as well as recording what's going on. So, with that in mind, they saw that, and they got spooked. Then they took off, headed back down the hill, and as they were driving back into town in their vehicle, they weren't tailed by anyone. They didn't see anyone off to the side or behind them. They had safe clearing. They get to a gas station, buy some snacks, I guess some beef jerky and Mountain Dew, and as the former mayor's son is waiting in line, a gentleman in a tan jump suit approaches him and says, "We know you were there. We know who your father is. We know that you applied for a scholarship to Morehead State University. If you ever want to attend college, have a mortgage, and allow your children to go to school, then I suggest you ignore what you saw and speak about this to no one." And he stood there kind of shaking, thinking, you know, who is this telling me this? Who's threatening me with this? And he turned and looked as the man was walking out. It was a gentleman in a tan jumpsuit who got in a white panel van with no windows, and they drove erratically out of the parking lot and headed back in the direction of the TNT depots in the swampland, where the Mothman was originally sighted. So that brings me to 2008. I went out to that same area, and the fence is completely covered now with not only foliage, but these post 10 years ago giant pines that are perfectly aligned and planted so strategically that there's no way it happened naturally. So as I'm approaching these trees and I'm walking up on that bank, I see a few cameras mounted in these trees that are following my movement. And that's when, at that point, I decided I'm not going to go any further from here. I'm just going to go ahead and take a few pictures and then head back to where I came from. And as I'm taking pictures, something is trying to access my Bluetooth on my telephone. And I kept denying the access. I wouldn't accept it. But for some strange reason, I wasn't getting cell service out here either. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not getting cell service. How is someone accessing my Bluetooth, and who's doing it? Well, they accessed it well enough to where they could hack in and delete every picture I took up to that point. Not of pictures of my children or of my wife or other things, but only of the area that I had taken pictures of there, and they were all corrupted. Accepted, but for some strange reason I wasn't getting cell service out here either. I'm thinking, well, I'm not getting cell service. How is someone accessing my Bluetooth? Who's doing it? You broke up there. I'm sorry. What was that last part? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know as we were leaving that area, and I realized not until the point that we got to the Low Hotel, which is one of the most haunted hotels in that region, and it just happens to be in Point Pleasant. We got back there, and that's when I discovered the pictures are corrupted. But as we were getting to the vehicle, all of these other vehicles pull in around us, and they all have men with tan jumpsuits, and the weird-looking hunting hats, but none of them have any hunting equipment, dogs, but they do have dog kennel cages in the back of their trucks, but they're completely clean, like they've never carried dogs in the back of them. And I don't hunt, but I know enough about hunting to know that if you're hunting, you're not going in a group of 20 or more. Only if you're tracking something would you be doing that. So what would they be looking for or trying to scare away? Now, an area like that, or like Area 51, or even Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, there's more than just UFO phenomenon or bizarre mythological or cryptozoological creatures that are sighted. You look at instances like at Wright-Patterson, there's several houses that are a part of the Wright-Patterson property. They're haunted. There's some sort of underlying paradox there attributed to native cultures and or curses mixed with angry spirit energy. And for some reason, they keep picking these areas to set up these government facilities. I don't know if they've discovered something so significant or a way to, like the HAARP project, HAARP. I'm sure you're familiar with HAARP. And if you take that into consideration, that's in Alaska. That now is set up in an area where about 50 or 60 years ago, a researcher who would constantly go into that area of Alaska befriended these villagers, Eskimos, or modernized Eskimos at that time, as modern as an Eskimo can get 50 years ago. So he went back after trapping maybe 2 months later, and when he was trapping and trading in the area to make his way back to that village to stay for a couple of weeks and set up camp there, he approached the village, walked in, and everyone was gone. Everything was left inside of the houses as if they had just left moments ago. Food was still out on the table. Fires were still burning. So he must have missed them by like a day. And he's walking around and he gets up to the highest point of this area that looks over the entire village. And he looks over and sees the huge body of water, the huge lake. And he sees all the dog sleds under this body of water. Because, you know, it's a frozen lake, of course. And then he notices something even weirder than that. On top of the ice is carved into that like equivalent to a crop formation, a weird geometric pattern carved into the top of the ice, and the dog sleds are all under the ice, but no dogs are attached to them, and all the people are gone. So what does our government do? They, for some reason, buy that land in the 1970s and completely get everyone out within a 20-mile radius, and they set up the HAARP project on that property. Why? Is it attributed to some sort of a strange time paradox or an anomalous reason connected to a UFO crossing A to B to where they can bend space and time in that exact area? So that's why they set up housing there? It's hard to tell. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fully embrace the Mothman. I want to know what that thing was that people saw, that Mothman creature was. What is it? What was that thing? Was it alien? Was it, a mythological creature? Was it a lower level entity? I was just fascinated by anyone investigating Point Pleasant or
Well, an interesting thing about Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, that entire region here in Ohio, from Wright-Patterson to the uranium enrichment plant in Piketon, Ohio, all the way west to the GE facility, the General Electric facility in Peebles, Ohio, which is where they test zero magnetic polarity jet propulsion engine systems, and like the spherical device that does not allow any kind of noise to come out of it. How they created this device is beyond me, but interesting enough, they picked that exact plot of land in Peebles, where in the 1880s there was a huge explosion that took place that they attributed to TNT, like a dynamite explosion, but actually so many witnesses said that there was a ball of fire that fell out of the sky, and the entire sky was black for 2 days. It turned out it was an asteroid, a huge asteroid or meteorite that crashed right in that area where the GE facility now sits. And that's a government facility. And it's sort of known as Ohio's Bermuda Triangle, or Ohio's, not so much Bermuda, I guess you could call it the Ohio Triangle. That's what I title it, between Dayton, Wright-Patterson, Piketon uranium enrichment plant, and then Peebles GE facility, because there's a lot of UFO activity that takes place right over that zero airspace region.
You're cutting out really, really rough.
Oh, I was just saying that the area between the Peebles GE facility all the way south to the Piketon uranium enrichment plant, all the way northwest to the Dayton Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is known as like the triangle or paradox triangle, because there's so many UFO sightings in that region over here anyway. Yeah. Mutual UFO Network. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's where we were, not to come to Ohio, but because the Dayton area has so much paranormal activity, more than I would attribute to any other town, I wonder if there's something more going on with that as well, because
Yeah.
not just because Paravizionz is located near Dayton, that we can look for our investigations. I mean, we can investigate anywhere we want, but it just seems to me that there's some places that it's just packed with more paranormal activity than others, that sort of that might tie into the whole UFO phenomenon. I mean, why is that some locations draw this activity in more than others?
If you noticed, notice, not really past tense noticed, but currently, if you notice so many paranormal activity, so much paranormal activity and so many paranormal anomalies take place around huge bodies of water. For example, Point Pleasant's right next to the river, Marietta, Ohio is right next to the river, Chillicothe is right in the river, and same with Dayton. The Scioto goes up around the valley region of Dayton. Dayton sits on a higher plane, but it has a huge underwater cave system, basically, underground water cave system under Dayton. A lot of people don't really understand or know about, but there is a huge underground water system that filters through that area. And Dayton, Miamisburg, Springfield, that whole area. I'm sorry. Walk through the lowest points of Dayton with a set of dowsing rods. You'll see what I mean. No, the rods would probably just insert themselves directly into the soil. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's like more UFOs are sighted in and around coastal regions than anywhere else in the world. North Carolina has a huge sighting reports coming in constantly. Same with the Caribbean, the whole area of the Bermuda Triangle, connecting to Cuba, Haiti, Havana, Cuba, looking at the Caribbean, all the way down to the Cayman Islands, and of course the Gulf of Mexico, well into the southern region of Texas, Alabama, all the way through South America. Just constant sightings. And you're not really sure about the Mothman or what to make of it. You said you don't really buy into it, but there's
For me, in my logic mind itself, I want proof. I want more. So I just can't wrap my head around there's this big flying creature flying around the town.
Yeah, you could easily attribute it to Scripture within the Old and New Testament, especially the Old Testament, where several books were removed by Constantine and the original Pope, the first Pope. The Book of Enoch, which is basically gives you the names of most of the lower demons, gives you names of most of the spawn of the fallen angels and the daughters of man, the Nephilim, the Seraphim, the Cherubim, several different types of angels. The Seraphim themselves are more like the clasp breakers. They're the ones who bring the messages of sorrow and the warnings, and they're the harbingers. And I think that's exactly what this Mothman entity is. I think it is a Seraphim angel. It fits the description mentioned in the book of Daniel, the book of Revelation, and the book of Enoch. If you look at the way it's described, an insectoid or an animal-type man creature with the torso of a man, the arms of a man, the wings of a dragon, the face of an animal, the face of a beast. You look at sightings before the Chernobyl incident. You look at sightings attributed to what happened before the earthquake in Japan last year. The same type of sightings and warnings. People seeing these things, and then something horrible happens.
Has been sighted around, not just Point Pleasant, but around our world?
Yes. Yeah, every major disaster, or even minor disaster, for example, it would be major to this community in South Wales in 1966. It was a huge man-made landslide. It was all coal debris that they were dumping into this one pit that over generation after generation, decade after decade, and within a century, was well over 100 feet high. And they had a severe rainstorm that came through for a good month and a half. All it did was rain. And it turned this mound of coal debris and coal garbage to liquefied form and almost like congealed and made it a solid mass, to where it started to slide down the bank in solid form, crashed into the school, and wiped out over 200 kids. That's an entire generation in South Wales in this small community. And a week before this all happened, and a week leading up to the final heavy rain, people started seeing this creature, similar to the Mothman of Point Pleasant, which in the late 60s was happening. And this was 1966 when this happened in South Wales.
You are, as far as this phenomenon, this is just really rocking my world. I'm very familiar with the angelic kingdom. I'm also very familiar with the lower level entities.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're describing, therapist, not to get into too much detail and give away your client's experience, but Nick and I encountered a creature very similar to what you're describing, but I did not think of it as an angel. I thought of it as something else. We encountered this thing on a case several years ago, and it still to this day it's really uncomfortable to discuss because it was the most frightening investigation I've ever been on. But now that you're describing this thing as an angel, not necessarily a good angel, but
Yeah, that's a possibility, but also keep in mind that Satan appears as an angel of light. He is the most seductive of all angels, or fallen angels, that is. A lot of people that understand or have heard the stories of where he tried to overthrow God, which is what led to him being cast out of heaven, is actually attributed to the human race as a whole, because we were the first creatures to have an actual soul. Seeing as angels were the originals, they never had souls because they were created for the purpose of just hanging out with God, basically. Where we were the ones given the ability of free will, the right to choose, the right to fail, the right for redemption. They don't have that because they don't understand those things. They don't face trials and tribulations like we do. But Lucifer was basically pissed off about it, saying, why are they so much better than us that they have a soul, a chance to be reborn if they fall from grace? And he basically created a coup, and that's what got him kicked out.
These natural disasters that have occurred to our planet, apparently there's been this creature that looks like the Mothman that's sighted around our world. This is something really what we're pursuing. I think this is a book. Yeah, I think this is another Neal person.
How did you know I was working on that?
From around the world, put it in one book because people don't know this. I mean, this takes research to find and dig this out. That's what you can throw in your mind. But again, this would be a great book.
Yeah, I'll have to get working on that. I'm currently, like I mentioned, finished with Haunted Holidays and shopping that around to mainstream agents and publishers, and I have a fourth book I'm working on it's titled Pencil Stick Chronicles, which is kind of like the old TV show Erie, Indiana, but it covers all genres from UFO sightings, crop formations, Bigfoot encounters with other cryptozoological entities, and or encounters with ghosts, and it's primarily about the Ohio Valley, but I'm tying everything in from a tri-county region that I've investigated and putting it into a small town known as Pencil Sticks. And the reason being I chose Pencil Sticks is because in Chillicothe, we have an area out by Ross Lake where a lot of the couples go to Neck. Yeah, I said Neck. I'm just dating myself now. Neck. They go to Neck, and so they go to Suckface. Right at the edge of Ross Lake, where you look out over the valley, there are two huge number 2 pencils jammed into the ground that are as large as telephone poles. No one knows who made it, no one knows why they did it, and no one knows who comes back to repaint it every year. And they've been there for over 20 years, and no one knows who did it. Yeah. Another thing they do locally here at Elizabeth's Grave, another local hotspot where allegedly a girl who was said to be a witch that fled from Salem, Massachusetts in 1692 was killed in this area in the 1720s, and she was allegedly disemboweled and hung from a tree to bleed out and die. And that area, I went, and there's several really, really old headstones, and it used to be a family burying plot, but now it's an entire wildlife reserve. So it's a heavily protected area. But you go back into the wooded region, and you follow this path, and it takes you to an area where there's a clearing. And I almost had a heart attack the last time I went out there. I went back as far as I could go, and they had someone from one of the local schools. They do it every year, or every senior class does it. They take and make a gigantic Bigfoot and stick it in the back of the woods to scare people away. So when I'm back there walking around, I bump into that and almost have a heart attack. Yeah, the pesky kids and their dog too. So, Nick, it sounds like you're really sick. Did you neck or something?
He went on, and he claimed, no, this was a big gentleman, first of all, I am not a man whore. I took my two good friends out with both females on a date. Now, one of them was cold and wearing t-shirts. I offered her my jacket. That's all I did. And I got cold, so giving her my jacket. That's the story.
So there was no necking. No necking. That's a shame. Okay. Well, you do sound very sick, man. Yeah. Yeah, I do love my my little kids, my soon-to-be 5-year-old and soon-to-be 2-year-old. Yeah.
Again, another wonderful show with our guest, Neal, and Neal, you gotta write that book. I'm serious. That'd be a fascinating book. And I'm just gonna top that at you. It's another book idea, but I think that would be really important for you because there's lots of people out there who don't know this or aware of this.
Yeah, I like to be a plethora of information, and I must say, since you would like to read a book like that from me, have you read any of my previous work? Because if you have, I'm sorry. I'll be happy to give you a refund.
I read a minimum of one book every 2 weeks, but recently I just haven't had time. I'm also trying to work on my own book, and as you well know, that's very, very time consuming, and I'm a perfectionist, so I'll write a chapter and then I'll throw the whole thing out and start over again. So I haven't had time to read any of the books yet, and I apologize.
Well, that's fine. Being a perfectionist is one of my strongest attributes and one of my greatest weaknesses at the same time. If your audience would like to know, you can order my books. My first one, which is Paranormal Chronicles, Tales of Humor, Horror, and the Absolutely Strange, from Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can get it through my publisher, Lulu.com, or directly order it through my website, parks-paranormal.8m.com. That's the number 8, lowercase m.com, parks-paranormal.8m.com. You can also catch me on any social network. I'm connected to Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. I tweet often. And also it's like a drowned down version of Facebook, really. It's just short and sweet. That's all it is. You don't get to post any cool pictures. That's what I don't like about it, unless you pay for your account, and then you get all of this extra space, which I don't really have time for. And also, I found out last week, I don't know who compiles this list, but apparently I made the list of the top 20 hottest in the paranormal field. Have you heard anything about that list, or is it just a scam? Yeah, I laughed it off at first, and then I got a reconfirmation on it saying, check this link. You're on this. And I was looking at it as one of my LinkedIn partners. I'm like, well, what the heck is this crap about? So I check it out. I'm apparently number 12 on the top 20. I beat Zach, and I beat Ryan, and I beat Chip Coffee. But I don't think Chip was in the top 20 at all, but I beat... I beat Ryan from Paranormal State, and I beat Zach from... he's built like a Masters of the Universe figure. I don't get that. But, of course, The number one was Kristen from Ghost Hunters. I mean, I can't be that pretty, but at least that was number 12. That was something to giggle about. I thought it was a joke, but I don't know if I haven't Googled that list to see if it's legit, but I just saw the link. Maybe I'll send it to you sometime so you can check it out. just go with it. Say, yeah, I'm number 12 in the top 20 hottest in paranormal. No, I'm very happy to.
Google it. Just go with it. I mean, just assume that's legit. Don't even research it. Just advertise it.
Just go with it. So yeah, I'm number 12 in the top 20 hottest in paranormal. Oh, no problem.
That's right.
That's wonderful. Have a great week.
Number 12. Well, again, we just enjoy talking with you so much, and thanks again for being our guest. This is the second time we've had Neal on the show, and I'm sure
I'm very happy to.
We'd love to have him on again at some future date. But this is Neal Parks, everyone. Check out his website or on Facebook, and that's it for us on your Spirit Beacon. And up next is The Buzz with Scotty and Zeta. And thanks again, Neal, for calling in.
Oh, no problem. It's wonderful. Have a great week.
You too.
Bye.
Goodbye. And that's our show for tonight, folks. Stay tuned next Monday night for our guest will be the famous Bill Beams.
Hey, this is Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers for RAD. I'm here to remind you that drunk drivers are still a major killer of young adults in this country. So always choose a designated driver, and remember, music lives, you should too.
Getting on in the state of Mississippi,